All right, good morning. We have a very interesting comparison here today. This one over here is a Martin D-28 Museum Special, 1941. And this one over here is a Martin D-28 1941 Authentic. So, what's the difference between these two? Now, I've heard this is actually the first museum I have seen in my hands. And I heard about these, and you hear stories, you hear rumors, how do they compare? How do they compare to the 41 Authentic? So, I'm here to tell you what I found out about the two. First of all, when I opened up the case for this, I thought, and you can tell this is the museum because it's missing the fret right here because I just did a neck reset on it, and I haven't put the fret in yet until I've made sure the action's where I want it, and I'm not going to have to take the neck off again or anything like that. So that's how you can tell these two guitars apart in the video. The one without the 14th fret right here is the museum, and the other one over here is the Authentic that's been in several of my videos. So, okay, let's play these two guitars first, and then I'm going to come back and talk to you about them a little bit. So, let's start off with we'll start off with the Authentic, because which one's the Authentic? You realize I'm looking at the camera monitor and the image is reversed, and so this is the Authentic, but I see it as a reversed image on the camera. So I have to think about that a minute. All right, we're going to get the Authentic. 41 Authentic, which has been in several videos. I think. Yeah, that's it. right, so let's talk about these a minute. Put my pick down if I can find it again. We're going to talk about the museum first, even though I played the 41 first. And I know I'm going to talk about them in the way I played them. I'm going to talk about the museum because it's really the one that we're concerned with here. Now, the history of the museum is it's a precursor to the authentic, more or less. I'm not sure exactly. Let me think about this a second. This guitar was made in 2010. So the museum specials, the museum edition, museum special, was made from 2009 to 2012, and this is a 2010 model. I checked the serial number. So 2010. But the 1937 D-28 authentic ran from before that. I think 05. I think 05 was the first 37 D-28. So this was a test run for the Rosewood. This is Madagascar Rosewood. And I guess Martin was going to do a test run. I have to go back and check all this history stuff. But my understanding, off the top of my head, was the museum was a copy of a D-28. There weren't any D-28s yet. The 37 authentic came out in 14, because I had the first one. I had one of the first ones. And I actually worked on the very first one. Yeah, so that was 14. So my understanding on this museum is it was a test run to see how the public would perceive the Madagascar Rosewood. The 18s, of course, are mahogany, so you can still make mahogany guitars. So, that's, people accept that, mahogany, right? There's various grades of mahogany, but when you're talking about rosewood, you're talking about a pretty big jump from the original, which was Brazilian rosewood, to this one, which is Madagascar rosewood, and now they've got Guatemalan rosewood, which, that's kind of even closer to Brazilian in my opinion. But I love Madagascar. So, point is, this was a pre-run. This museum special was a pre-run, a test model to see how the public would accept a non-Brazilian rosewood guitar. Response was really good, of course, because these are terrific, awesome guitars. The construction of this guitar, as far as I can tell, as far as I know, is exactly the same as the 41 authentic. It has a T-bar in the neck. It's put together with hide glue. Like I said, when I opened the case up, I had to look at the label, the stamp, to see, did he send me a 41 authentic by mistake? And you can tell that one of these guitars is made out of hide glue, because you can look over here at the bridge and you see just like a tiny little sparkle of glue line, and you can look inside and you can catch that. And if I didn't know, I could tell this was made by put together with hide glue, and I certainly knew when I took the neck apart. This was in a triage video a couple weeks ago, my last triage video, my most recent one, and I commented on he wanted the action setup, and I said, man, it's just a little too high to work with your existing saddle. I will have to take that saddle down to nothing to get the action where we want it. And it really honestly really needs a neck reset. It does not need much of a neck reset, but it needs a little bit. And I mean, I'm talking about 12 to 15 thousandths of an inch off the heel right here, which is just not much. I mean, I took the neck off on it. He agreed, because previous customer, I've worked on a lot of guitars for him. He trusts my judgment. And I took the neck off, and I took maybe 8, no more than 10 swipes with sandpaper right here. Popped it back on. I said, ooh, I like that. I put it back on, and I have exactly right now a 90 thousandths of an inch action here. Well, I haven't even touched the existing saddle. So it looks like I was pretty successful so far in amazingly resetting the neck to this saddle and getting the action I wanted, which tells me a little bit about the accuracy of my neck resetting technique, which I like. I'm happy about that. Yeah, I've done that a couple times, several times where I'm not talking too much here. I had an actual 1939 D-18, and it had an actual ivory saddle on it that was the actual exact height, and I wanted to reset that neck to that saddle, and I did, and that was one of the first ones that I did successfully. And since then, I trust my measurements and my accuracy on the neck reset, to I've been fairly successful several times in resetting the neck to the action I want with an existing saddle. Not to say that I might not, in a month or a couple weeks after this is settled in, I might end up, adjusting the saddle just a little bit, but fresh out of the jig and clamps, pretty good. Okay, so when I had the neck off, we had definite hide glue in there, no question. There's a definite T-bar. I took a picture of it, which, if I can remember, I'll put it in this video as a photo. All right, so it's got the same tuners. It's got the same fossil ivory nut and saddle material. This one came with black bridge pins, which I'm not sure. I can't remember. They're not right for this guitar. They should be red dots. I mean, for a 41, there should be red dot pins instead of black dots. And I don't know if the 41 Authentic came with stock. This one didn't have stock pins in it when I got it, and then neither did my other one. And I think they come maybe with black dots, which is not quite correct. They should be red dot pins, but whatever. This guitar has red dot antique acoustic pins in it, which is more accurate historically. Now, what's funny about this one a little bit, and I'm going to go back and work with this, is these pins sit up quite a bit higher than they do in the Authentic. And I don't think I've worked on the Authentic. Let me show you the height of them. This is hard to do. I got to get to the camera. Look at the height of the pins above the saddle, above the bridge. And then look at, there's a stand. Look at that. Look at the Authentic. These are just a little bit lower, which I noticed with my hand. When I was playing that one, I noticed I hit them. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to reseat those. Maybe ream out the top of the hole. Not ream it out. Countersink it. Countersink the top of the hole just a little bit. But I am curious as to why those aren't sitting in there better, because I did fit the pin. And these holes were not slotted very well. The high E, for instance, the string was pushed way into there, and it was pushing on the winding. I have a video on how to string a guitar with a slotted bridge, and I talk about that a lot. You can go find that video. But basically what happens is you catch that winding, and it pulls the winding down, and the string will never stop stretching, and eventually it'll break. When I pulled these strings out and looked at that, I saw that immediately, and I couldn't get the string and the pin in there, and I saw it's not slotted correctly. Obviously that must be done from the factory, so they got better at slotting. So no, that's no big deal. Okay, but as far as the actual guitar goes, I noticed one thing immediately when I picked it up. The neck is fatter, and I picked it up and I thought, that neck is fatter. Not much, but that neck is just a tiny, tiny little bit fatter than the Authentic. And I said, I'm going to have to measure that and confirm my suspicions. And so sure enough, I got the calipers out and I measured both necks back and forth, and I found out that the 41 Authentic is indeed a little bit thinner. And not only is it thinner front to back, but it's also thinner in the width, just a little. I'm going to pop the graph up here in a minute, and you can see that. And I felt it with my hand. And then I thought, I wonder how this compares to a 73 or a 70s D-28. And again, and one of my customers very, very kindly let me keep his 73 D-28, which I've had on several videos. and it's a terrific guitar. I really like it. It is the epitome of what a modified 70s should be, in my opinion. I got it out, measured it. It was almost exactly the same. Just, a little bit of different. But it was extremely close to this one. And I love 70s necks. So I thought, well, the museum special is winning this race on the necks. But when I was sitting here playing it, I realized, and this has happened before, it's hard to measure the V of a neck. But I realized as I was sitting here playing it, that this guitar, this museum, has a rounder profile, a C-shaped profile. And I don't like C-shaped profiles. I had the D-28 39 authentic, and I got rid of it because of that C-shaped neck. It's in one of my videos where I compare the 39 versus the 70 D-28. And I said, this 70s neck is just so fabulous for me, and I am not getting along with the 39. I said, the 39 feels narrow to me. It just really feels slimmer. I went and measured them, and they were exactly the same. I mean, down to as close as I could measure. I'd like to say thousandths, but, you can't measure that. You generally round about 5 thousandths of an inch or so. They came out as close to exact as I can measure. And I thought, that's weird. I would have sworn up and down that the 39 neck was skinnier. And then I realized as I was playing it was the V, because the 70s D-18, that particular one, had a nice rounded V, but it had a definite V to it. So what happens is my thumb sits in a different place on that neck. And I just could not get used to the 39. I tried so hard to love that guitar, and I could not do it. And when I had that one particular 70s on the bench, it was just, this neck just blows the 39 away. I mean, it is immediately superbly comfortable for me, and I just can't get along with this 39. So I sold the 39. All right. Later on, I got an aged version in, and the aged version was better. And I swear it had a little bit more V to it. I mean, I could feel it. It was not as uncomfortable to me. However, so I'm sitting there playing this guitar for the video, and when I got to those swing chords, you see, that's where I really noticed a V, because I put my thumb back here like this, and I want it on a V, and I messed up the swing chords the first time. I had to redo it, and I thought, that neck's round. Because I had no problem with the authentic, the 41. I just whipped through those swing chords, and I'm like, nothing, And I went to this one, and I messed up the first time. It just, So I started feeling for it while I was playing it. And I think this neck on the museum has got just a little bit more roundness to it. And at first, when I looked at the measurements, I thought, man, I'd swap the authentic for this one because it's a bigger neck. But no, the C is different. The back of it, just a little bit, Not to say I couldn't get used to this neck, because I do like the big necks, and it is almost exactly the same as the 70s. But I'm just commenting on this to how personal and particular a neck is for me, to get that guitar to the last 1% of comfort. And that's why I sold my 37 D-28, because, every single video I did on that guitar, I complained about the neck, and I just could not get used to it. I could get used to it, okay? But it was always, I have to get used to it. You see, I've got other guitars, and I commented on this one. I'm talking about the guitars that hang on the wall, the Prue, the OMB. I don't have to get used to it. There's nothing on that guitar that I have to get used to. And so it's why I have another guitar that I have to get used to. I'm just not going to do it. And for me, the sound or the playability, the comfort of a guitar in my hand, I would say 75% of it has to do with the neck. The sound out of the instrument, I can adapt to that. I can modify it. I can tweak it. I can get the sound, if it's not already there, I can get the sound to where I want it, to that pinnacle. But the neck, unless I'm going to go shave it, which I don't want to do, the neck is just so much of it. So my point is when I get a guitar in my hands and people say, well, why didn't you keep that one? That was a terrific sounding guitar. Yeah, so is the Prue. And the Prue has a neck that I don't have to adapt to. Like I said in the video on the instruments on the wall, the Prue that's it for me. I designed that guitar for me. Has the woods I want, has the sounds I want. It has the exact perfect neck in the world because I shaved it to me. And I'm not going to adapt to anything else. So, funny thing about the neck on this one. I thought, man, I'm going to love this neck because it's bigger. And I noticed it, the bigness, when I got it in my hand. But when I started playing it, I didn't like it as well. And so that's a personal revelation, a personal thing to me, that surprised me. So I pick up the 41 Authentic, and it's got a little bit more V. Just a little, It's a little thinner up here at the nut. Yeah, it is. But this one feels different than the other one I had. I had an earlier one. It wasn't early, it was actually older, but it was all beat up. The finish was flaking off of it. It was an authentically aged instrument, It was a great guitar. But when I played that one, that neck, every single time I picked it up, that neck, wow, that's a skinny neck. And I don't feel that with this one. And I lost the specs to that other guitar. And so I've got to, I wish I could go back in and compare it to see if my hands were right. But I don't feel that way about this guitar. I pick this guitar up and I go, well, it's a slim 11/16 neck, but it's not bad. And it's got more V than the Museum. Yeah, right there I can feel that point when I'm rubbing my thumb back here. I can feel that V right there. Less shoulder right here. And that just makes all the difference in the world for me. So, I don't think I'd trade. Not based on the neck alone. Another funny thing. So these two guitars are again about as identical as you will ever get in any two guitars. If you ever get a chance to get a 41 Museum, I'd go for it. It's an Authentic with a slightly chunkier, beefier neck. So, if I was able to buy one or the other of these right now, oh man, I might go for the Museum. It's a rare guitar. Not much rare. I'd have to look at the numbers. I can't say that. Anyway, that Museum that rattle you hear is the fret inside the body. That Museum is basically a 41 Authentic. It's a precursor to it. Now, when I sat down and played it, I noticed something really funny. When I first sat down, before I even turned the camera on, I played them just a little bit, and I thought, wow, the 41, the Authentic, sounds better. I thought, sounds richer. I thought, how can that be? And I thought, you should check the tuning, because I keep my personal guitars in A432 tuning, and I've talked about this, and it's not because of the magic of the universe or anything like that, but I'll tell you the story again, okay? So, someone mentioned A432 tuning, and I thought, why would anyone want to do that? So I Googled it on the internet web thingy, and I found out that there's a whole cult of A432 tunings that claim that A440 was a certain German dictator's thing to create more tension and more strife in his music. And the A432 matches up more closely to the harmonic of the universe. And I thought, well, okay. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'm just listening to the hypothesis, and I thought, huh. So that evening, talk about the harmonic of the universe thing, That evening, I went into to town to do a recording session with a cowboy. And this guy is a cowboy. I'm not talking about an artificial Hollywood cowboy. I'm talking about a cowboy. This guy is the most authentic cowboy that I know. And he doesn't talk much. Man, you got to work words out of him. So I sat down with my mandolin to record on this tune. He says, I'm tuned in A432. I thought, what? I said, you're tuned to A432, and you want me to, you want me to retune my mandolin? Yep. Why in the world is this authentic cowboy tuned to A432? Anyway, whatever. I didn't ask any questions, I tuned to A432 on my mandolin, and then I left it there because tuning a mandolin is a lot of work. And as I played it more and more, I thought, I like this. If I'm not playing a jam session, where I got to tune to a bunch of people and that kind of thing, then I'll tune up. But if it's just me playing here, even with a duo or a trio, I like A432. It's a deeper tone, especially on mandolin. That's nice, It's a little richer tone, and the strings have a little bit more flux to them, which I like. I don't really like stiff strings, which is a funny oxymoron because I use medium gauge strings, and on my personal guitars like the Prue, I use a medium E, and medium B, and then lights in the middle. So I don't like a full light gauge strings because I don't like the thin trebles. I like the feel of a fatter string, but I want a little bit of a looser feel to it. I don't like stiff guitars. I like a looser feel. And going to A432 gives me that slightly looser, more relaxed feel. So that's the whole story on the A432. So when I picked up these two guitars this morning, I said my authentic sounds a little richer. I thought, check the tuning. And sure enough, the authentic was tuned to 432, and I had tuned the museum to 440. And so I detuned the museum down because I wanted to see then, is that magical feel got to come into the museum special? And I think it did. I thought, I like this. It's just that little bit extra richer. It's just what I'm used to, is what it comes down to. So it's a funny story, but I noticed it when I picked it up this morning. And I'm not good on pitch. Some of you guys out there, you notice this pitch immediately. You go, man, are you tuned low? And I think, how in the world did you notice that unless you have a really good sense of pitch or you're trying to play along with me, both of which is fair. I sprung A432 on a fiddle player once, and it absolutely drove her crazy because, fiddle players are really big on pitch and ear and that kind of thing. And she said, this is weird. Everything's just that little bit flat. And I thought, wow. I do not have that sense of pitch. I've never had that sense of pitch. I have a hearing loss. But back in music school, I noticed that immediately, that I don't have a repeatable sense of pitch. I can tell in comparison, like when I'm tuning guitar, I can tell that, but I could never tell you pull a G out of the air like that. And some people can. Oh, that G's flat. Strictly from the sound of that note with no no comparison point, no relation point. Fascinating. But I noticed it on these two guitars. And I noticed something. I said, the authentic is a little nicer. I'm surprised. Because they're identical guitars. They're as identical as any two guitars could be. So that I retuned the authentic down, or the museum. I retuned it down to 432. And then I started playing it. I didn't really get to spend much time with it. So now I will tell you one more thing about the museum in this case. I just reset the neck on it, and it can take people's opinions vary. Some people say, "Oh, it takes 6 months. It takes a year." My guitar never came back from neck reset. I don't know about that. I mean, I don't know this guitar before the neck reset, but I know I've done resets on my guitars. And I didn't feel like they were any different than any other string tension removal thing. So in other words, there's a lot of things I do where I remove the strings and remove the tension. And I didn't feel it took any longer. This is the hide glue, so yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a difference probably as that hide glue crystallizes. Gets hard again, but this guitar has actually been glued together for a week. I had to, take off for Los Alamos, and I got it glued up, got it out of clamps, but it wasn't quite ready to string up yet. It needed more drying time. So I just put it in the case, and I'll string it up when I get back. So it sat in the case for a good week, totally unstrung, before I came back. So I expect it's going to get a little bit more alive in this over the next month. So, cut this guitar just a little bit of slack in that respect. when you listen to the comparison, I think it's probably going to wake up a little bit more. But if it does, I mean, great, But so here's the G. The other hat, I can't pick, See, I can't tell the pitch of that compared to the pitch of that out of the air. One thing I do, this is fun. I'm not talking way too much here again, but these are good stories, okay? They're insights into things is the way I look at it. If you want to just look at the comparison of the guitar, you should have stopped 20 minutes ago when I was playing. One thing I noticed is that in order to train my ears better, I like to try to cold tune a guitar that's on the bench. So I just tune it straight to that note, what I think is a D. No tuner, no tuner. Try to get it. And I've noticed that with big guitars, big-bodied guitars, I tend to tune them sharp. So I tend to go to a D sharp, and I tend to go to a G sharp, sometimes even an A. Sometimes I can, I can tell by the feel of the string when I'm getting too tight on the thing. There's a certain flexibility that I'm used to feeling, and I can almost tune a guitar by the feel of that string, which I bet a lot of people. I get that's a skill that I developed, But what I've noticed is the big guitars I tune sharp, and the little guitars, the OMs, the triple aughts, I tend to tune them flat. So what's happening is I'm tuning to a tone as much as I am a pitch. So I hear this big-bodied guitar, and I want that tone up just a little because I like bright, snappy guitars. I don't like dull, bassy guitars. I'm a mid-range treble kind of guy, So I tend to tune these up, and I think, yeah, that's it. Which is funny because you would think that with A432, I would want them duller sounding, but that's not the case. I get used to that tuning once I've tuned to it. But I tend to take big body guitars just a little sharp, and I tend to take little body guitars which are naturally bright. I tend to make them just a little bit flatter. So that's interesting, I tune to the tone. Let's say that the tone has a dramatic effect on my perception of pitch. And I'm pretty sure it does with a lot of other people. Everybody hears things completely different. But I've had some conversations with people, recording engineers, with great ears. about that kind of thing, and they say, oh yeah, the tone and the timbre have a lot to do with your perception of the pitch. It's interesting, the whole how the science of your brain works on that kind of thing. Some people, and that's why I think some people can tune to a pitch out of the air, because their focus is on the pitch, and their focus is less. Their brain is focused less on the timbre and the tone, and the tension of the string, and the neck. All those things. All of those things affect my perception of the pitch. So, it's interesting things, okay? All right, so which guitar is this? This is the museum because it's missing a fret. So I sat there and I played this guitar a little bit more, and I thought, yeah, that feels just a little friendlier than it did this morning. So, all right, so there's the two guitars. I have never had. This actually is the first museum I've ever had in my hands. So I certainly have never had the opportunity to compare these two guitars. Interesting, I'm going to go back now and I'm going to figure out why those pins are sitting up so high. Possibly countersink the pinholes just a little so that the collars sit down just a little bit more and they're not so high. And then I'm going to let the action settle. Then put the fret in when I'm happy with that, Every time I put the fret in first, I end up having to take it back out and do something else to the neck. So this guitar does have extremely tight Waverleys on it. And there was a period of time there, which corresponds with this, when the Waverleys came way too tight. They were just stiff as could be. And the only cure to that is to remove the collar and back it off a little bit. And these collars are held on with red Loctite, which is a very powerful Loctiting agent. You may have to heat those, and if you do, you're going to destroy the little plastic bushing that's in there. I have a special tool from Stu Mack, and I tried loosening some of those, and it was no go. Not on the guitar especially. I'd have to take the tuners off, put them in a vise, and get them away from the guitar so that if I slip, I'm not going to bang up the guitar. So I don't know about that. I put graphite on them, and I spun them with a drill. Really spin them. Try to work that lube in there. Try to heat up the bushing, because a lot of times when you spin them like that, that'll heat up the bushing, and you'll see the bushing, boom, suddenly come off. None of that work. The owner does have another set of tuners from Stu Mack as replacements for these, and my advice is going to be probably just go with that. I also noticed that the edges of these tuners are a little square compared to these tuners. They're the same tuners, they're the oval button tuners, but these are about 4 years later. Stu Mack fixed this problem, and these have a little smoother finish on them. The edges aren't quite as sharp, and these tuners work great. They tune easy. So, that's one thing about these older Waverleys is they did have some problems back then, and they weren't always the holy grail of tuners. They had some issues where they were stiff. Worse, they would be inconsistent stiff. One of them would be super loose, and the next one would be so stiff you could barely turn it. So, anyway. All right, it's a cool guitar. I'm glad I didn't have to take the saddle down. It's got the stock saddle height. I do notice a slight whisker crack coming in here, which nothing you can really do about that. That's from the corners of the bridge causing cracks. It's very slight. It's a very, very common problem. I wouldn't do anything. I would go out and let it get finish checked. There's a little bit of a finish crack right here on the pickguard, where the pickguard is probably shrinking a little bit. That's the way it goes, That's a natural aging of the guitar. This is a 2010, so what's that make it? 13 years old now? We're 23, right? Yeah, 13 years old. So, that's getting some age on it. And this finish cracks are just going to happen. Just let them happen. I would take this guitar out in freezing weather, bring it into a warm room, open the case, and crack that finish and just get it out of your system. So I'm not going to do that with the authentic, you know. But it's a museum special, so it ought to look like it should be in a museum. Anyway, all right, I've talked way too much. Let's get these guitars out of here.